What is up, everyone? Sergeant Mercury here, and today we're converting to Kings and Generals once again, and their Battle of Greece series. This time, This time it's gonna be about the Battle of Crete, 1941. Yeah. Also, I apologize about that Roblox video. I don't know why I posted that. I was bored at like 1 a.m. So yeah. I lost a lot of subscribers for that, so I apologize. But yeah, that was a mistake. Without further ado, let's get started.
The island of Crete was a very important strategic point in the Mediterranean. On one side, it led directly to Greece and the Aegean Sea, and on the other, it served as a gateway to Africa.
Yeah, this is a very important.
This made the island desirable for expanding empires across history. Centuries of resistance to foreign occupation ignited a fiercely partisan spirit amongst the Cretan population, one that would prove to be a thorn in the side of these invaders. In 1941, the Germans would covet the Aegean island as well, and they would be met with fierce resistance, with war raging.
Yeah, I think this is the first mass paratrooper attack ever in war.
All over Europe, Hitler took the decision to prepare for an unprecedented military operation to reach his goal, forever changing the history of warfare. Welcome to our video on the Battle of Crete. If you're interested in the history of this era, don't forget to check out our second channel, The Cold War. The link is in the top right corner. This video is brought to you by the Ridge Wallet. We've been using Ridge Wallets for almost a year now. Serve 30 different colors and styles, but don't take lifetime 5 days and get Ridge.
So cool, seeing the old borders over the new borders. It's so interesting seeing how the map has changed. And it's so accurate. I love it. And it's detailed. Wait, what? Okay, I'm not sure that. Okay, there's some issues here that I'd like to address. First of all, if anyone is wondering about these little places, those are just occupied by Germany. Secondly, I don't think Germany occupied that little area of Bulgaria. That's a bit ridiculous. Third, these islands, I wish they put color on them, because they just look like rocks. And then fourth, those actually no. Fourth, this is just an occupation map, because there was already sort of puppet governments set up in Montenegro, Albania, I think Serbia, and Croatia. So yeah, that's why it's not showing, because this is just the land they occupy.
In late October 1940, the Kingdom of Greece had been invaded by fascist Italy. The British, having guaranteed their Greek allies against the Italian threat,
Last time I recorded this video, my computer died. So I need to charge it.
Quickly moved to reinforce the island of Crete with the 14th Infantry Brigade, mainly at Suda Bay. Brigadier Brian Chappell was placed in command of this unit to defend the island. For the British, control of Crete was of the utmost importance, since it gave them an ideal place to maintain their naval and air superiority in the eastern Mediterranean. But as the Greeks managed to repel Mussolini's offensive, Hitler feared that the British could use Crete to prepare a landing on the Balkan coast, or that they could conduct from there aerial bombings on the Romanian oil fields, critically needed for the planned campaign against the Soviet Union. If the Germans wanted to safely launch Operation Barbarossa, they needed to secure Greece and the Cretan island for themselves. In April 1941, Hitler launched Operation Marita, and his forces invaded the Greek mainland. Despite fierce resistance, the Germans managed to occupy the country in just 24 days. But Crete still posed a threat to Hitler's plans, and he needed to quickly decide how to deal with it. Despite the superiority in numbers of the Italian navy, they had been defeated by British Admiral Andrew Cunningham's forces at Taranto and Matapan, and so they couldn't be trusted to launch an amphibious assault on the island.
By the way, I don't think it's something that's stated that often. Italy's navy was actually quite good. Like, it was very, very good. The only issue was that the Axis didn't have that much fuel, so Italy was sort of limited on where they could use it. And for most of the war, they just kept it, like, along their country's coastline for defense.
However, the Germans now boasted air superiority in the region, and when General Kurt Student of the 11th Air Corps presented a plan for an airborne invasion of Crete, codenamed Operation Marita, he managed to convince the Führer on April 25th to issue a directive in favor of this audacious operation. General Alexander Löhr of Luftflotte 4 was placed in overall command of Operation Marita, but General Student would be assigned to lead the airborne invasion. Student was a very capable and energetic commander, fighting as a pilot in World War I and creating in 1938 the 1st Battalion of Fallschirmjäger, the paratrooper branch of the Luftwaffe. Confident in the success of the operation, Student started using Junkers Ju-87 Stuka bombers to disrupt the sea power of...
Hold on. My freaking cat wants to go in, even though I just let him out. Oh, goodness. You are a weird one.
Of the British fleet and to carry out air raids on British airfields. Meanwhile, he prepared his men for the upcoming offensive. He divided his forces into 10 air transport groups, with a total of approximately 600 troop carriers and 100 gliders. The reliable transport Junkers Ju-52 and the assault glider DFS-230 were the most used among this. The 3-engine Junkers Ju-52 was an ideal machine for parachuting, capable of carrying 13 paratroopers and their equipment. The DFS-230 was a glider with a speed of about 100 to 120 miles per hour that could carry 8 passengers, one of them with the ability to fire a machine gun through a hole on the fabric on the right side. On the sea, Student would be aided...
Why does it look so funny?
...by 2 naval convoys carrying equipment and supplies, commanded by Admiral Karl-Georg Schuster. The Luftwaffe's plan was to do an air landing in 3 groups, with a total of 15,000 men, with 7,000 reinforcements coming by sea. Group West, formed by the elite 1st Airborne Assault Regiment, would be commanded by General Eugen Meindl. Colonel Bruno Brauer's Group East would have the 1st Fallschirmjäger Regiment of the 7th Air Division, and Group Center with the rest of the 7th Air Division. Student planned to do the landing in 2 waves, the first in the morning, with Group West landing at the Malmö airfield, and the 3rd Fallschirmjäger Regiment of Group Center near Kenya, and the second wave in the afternoon, with Group East landing at Heraklion, and the 2nd Fallschirmjäger Regiment of Group Center near the airfields of Rhymnon. General Wolfram...
Jesus, look at the name of that! I mentioned this in one of my other videos, but the reason why German, they have words like this is because a bunch of them are just really big compound words. There's like a bunch of different words in here. Like Jaeger, regiment, and Fallschirm, they're all words just put together in this one big word.
Wolfram von Richthofen's 7th Air Corps, composed of 200...
Seriously though, they're so long.
180 bombers, 150...
Yeah, that's why Germany has the stereotype of having really weird words.
...dive bombers and 180 fighters, was to provide strong air support for all the landings. Student's gliders, meanwhile, would have to protect the paratroop drop and neutralize ground defenses before landing themselves. Once Kenya, Malmö, Heraklion and Rhymnon had fallen, the naval convoys would land General Julius Papa Ringel's battle-hardened 8th Mountain Division to secure Suda Bay, and from there they would move on to occupy the rest of the island through its mountain ranges. Back on Crete, 19,000 men, commanded by General Bernard Freyberg, arrived at the island after a hasty evacuation from mainland Greece. Freyberg was a remarkable and experienced commander, recently seeing action in Greece, commanding New Zealand's divisions in their evacuation. When he arrived on Crete, all he wanted to do was return to the Middle East. But as the British realized that the Germans were coming for Crete, Churchill put Freyberg in command of the Cretan forces, thinking that an experienced general like him would be better prepared than Brigadier Chappell. At this point, the British had been largely preparing for an amphibious invasion, with Admiral Cunningham forming 4 task forces to prevent seaborne landings. Force A, commanded by Admiral Henry Rawlings, was placed to the west of Crete to engage with the Italian Navy if it appeared. It was composed of the warships Warspite and Valiant and 5 destroyers. Captain Henry Rowley's Force B was nearby between Cape Matapan and Sapienza Island, with 2 cruisers and 2 destroyers to assist Force A or C if they needed it. From Leros to the Kassos Strait was Force C, with 2 cruisers and 4 destroyers, commanded by Admiral Edward King in defense of Heraklion and Scythia. And with 3 cruisers and 4 destroyers, Admiral Irvine Glennie's Force D was placed west of the Antikythera Channel in defense of Rethymnon. But information gathered by ultra-intelligence alerted the British of the incoming airborne invasion, and Freyberg had to prepare his defenses from scratch. He also had to be cautious.
It's interesting how my cat is like licking. It's like my cat is actually interested in it. He's been looking at it the whole time.
Not to show that they were expecting an airborne invasion, as that would have revealed that they had deciphered the Enigma code. By May 17th, the general had available some 40,000 troops, including British, New Zealanders, Australians and Greeks. Although some lacked weapons. Freyberg divided his forces
That's a good amount for an island that small.
Into 4 groups to defend the 4 points where the invaders were going to land. At Heraklion, he placed Chappell's 14th Infantry Brigade with some Greek and Australian battalions, with a total garrison of 8,000 men. In the Georgiopolis-Rethymnon sector was Brigadier George Vassey's 19th Australian Infantry Brigade, with some Greek regiments attached, for a total of 7,500 men. At Suda Bay stood the British Marines of General Eric Weston in defence of Kenya, accompanied by some Greek and Australian forces with some 8,000 men. And finally, the 2nd New Zealand Division under Brigadier Edward Puttick covered the Malame-Galatas sector just west of Kenya with approximately 8,000 more men. Freyberg further assigned the 1st Battalion of the Welsh Regiment at the Akrotiri Peninsula and placed east and west of Kenya some 16 light tank Mark 6s and 6 obsolescent heavy tanks Matilda Mark II. At dawn on May 20th, Operation Mercury was launched. It started with the 7th Air Corps performing a series of concentrated attacks on the British defensive positions, followed by Student's first wave of gliders and paratroopers. Group West was the first to land, with 3 companies landing near Malame. Then landed 2 companies from Group Center, 1 near Galatas and 1 more at the Akrotiri Peninsula. In response, the low-altitude machine guns and anti-aircraft guns of the defenders fired ceaselessly to keep the paratroopers pinned down. To the south and east of the Malame airfield, as well
Over here looks like they're pretty
as on the Akrotiri Peninsula, the Germans were swiftly dealt with and practically wiped out.
Yeah, I heard that, like, also, I could be wrong, by the way, I heard that, like, this operation was pretty bad for the Germans, too. Like, I heard that they lost a ton of troops.
Paratroopers suffered massive casualties against the British barrage, and General Meindl himself was seriously wounded within an hour of landing.
Oh boy.
But Group West was initially successful, capturing the high ground overlooking the Malame airfield from the west, and
oh my gosh, like, the German divisions, they just disappeared.
Driving underground the defenders
Or, I don't even know if they are divisions. They're not divisions, they have to be smaller.
near Galatas,
Battalions?
so that some of the gliders could land undetected. By afternoon, the Germans were halted by
And you land over all those troops undetected.
the strategic Hill 107 at the western edge of Malmö, and a dust storm held up the arrival of the second wave of paratroopers. Finally, at 16:15, the rest of Group Center dropped towards Rethymnon, while Group East delayed for an hour their arrival at Heraklion. This delay also caused the drops to be spread out, enabling the defenders to kill many of the paratroopers before they had even reached the ground. Just like in the first wave, the Germans sustained heavy casualties on landing, although they managed to occupy the hills south of Rethymnon. But at Heraklion, Group East had lost 1/3 of their forces and were now on the defensive. Realizing the failure of his plan, Student decided to concentrate his remaining forces on supporting the attack against Malmö. On May 21st, Vassi's forces launched a counterattack against the Germans at Rethymnon, but the paratroopers held firm. Meanwhile, Student sent the devastating Stukas to bombard Malmö, Rethymnon and Heraklion in preparation for a renewed attack. Group East and Center were ordered to hold their ground in a defensive position, while Student dropped 550 paratroopers at Tefrontis to reinforce Group West. At Hill 107, the 22nd New Zealand Battalion under Colonel Leslie Andrew stood as the main unit in defense of Malmö, and he decided to launch an attack on the Germans without support. This assault was very effective, as the paratroopers were only armed with small arms and grenades, and they couldn't resist much longer. But despite
What about these guys back there? What are they doing?
the success of his assault, Andrew retreated from Hill 107 at night after his tanks broke down, thinking that he had been overwhelmed. This stroke of luck enabled the Germans to fulfill their main objective. Protected by the glider's fire, the Germans rallied and then seized Hill 107 and the western edge of the airfield. This was the turning point of the battle, as the Germans subsequently managed to take the airfield of Malmö, and they could now continue to land more troops.
What? How does that happen? So they were almost destroyed when they were over here. What?
And equipment for the invasion, including a regiment of mountain troops led by General Ringo. With these reinforcements, the Germans quickly gained the upper hand and gained numerical superiority. At night, the first naval landing was attempted, carried out by 20 Kaikis escorted by the Italian torpedo boat Lupo. But Force D managed to repel them, destroying half of the enemy boats. However, this caused Admiral Glennie's forces to suffer an ammunition shortage, and they had to be recalled to Alexandria in the subsequent hours. The following day, a new naval landing attempt was thwarted by Force C at dawn. This convoy of 38 Kaikis, escorted by the Italian destroyer Sagittario, was directed towards Heraklion. The heroic actions of the Sagittario, laying a smokescreen under concentrated fire, managed to save the flotilla and return to Greece unharmed. Furthermore, the British Navy was under unremitting bombardment, losing 2 cruisers and 3 destroyers in the process, and Admiral King ordered Force A to reinforce Force C in the Aegean Sea. This was a mistake, as the 2 forces were now easy prey for the Luftwaffe. Warspite and Valiant were both hit by bombs, while the destroyer Greyhound and the cruisers Gloucester and Fiji were sunk. The naval forces would be reinforced by the 5th Destroyer Flotilla coming from Malta, consisting of 5 destroyers under the command of Lord Louis Mountbatten on the Kelly. But these reinforcements too would be assaulted by the Stukas, which succeeded at sinking the destroyers Kashmir and Kelly. Mountbatten and his crew, however, would be saved by the destroyer Kipling, immediately retreating back to Alexandria with his flotilla. Overall, these heavy losses forced the British fleet to vacate the area around Crete and leave the island on May 23rd, consolidating the triumph of the Luftwaffe over the British Navy. Back inland, a new counterattack by Vassi's forces managed to defeat the Germans at the southern hills of Rethymnon. The paratroopers had to retreat to the town of Perivolia, with some of them further retreating to a factory at Stavromenos. Back in Galatas, Group Center launched an assault on Pink Hill. They managed to take it, but then lost it to a counterattack by Captain Michael Forrester and his Greek regiment. Meanwhile, Group East temporarily captured half of Heraklion by afternoon during a daring assault, but Chapel's forces counterattacked and recaptured the western half of the town. The British were resisting tooth and nail, but without Malame, their efforts would be fruitless. At night, the New Zealanders under Putic launched a counterattack to recapture the vital airfield of Malame, but they were soundly defeated by Ringel's fresh mountain troops. This ended their aspirations for taking back the now main landing point for the Germans. Over the next few days, the Germans continued to strengthen their forces from Malame, while Group Centre around Rethymnon and Group East at Heraklion kept resisting the British assaults under heavy pressure. May 23rd started with a fearsome German attack. Group Centre, reinforced and better equipped, captured Galatas and assaulted Pink Hill, expelling the Greeks there. But Putic knew that if the invaders were not hit hard and unexpectedly, they would sweep out the defenders. As such, he sent the Maori regiments under their traditional war cry, the haka, to take the Germans by surprise. This was highly effective, and Putic managed to liberate Galatas from German control. But the Germans were reinforced by Ringel's mountain troops, and started a new counterattack 2 days later, forcing the Maoris to retreat. With Galatas now in the hands of the Germans, the road to Suda Bay was open. Putic then retreated to form a new defensive line from Kania to Suda, centered at a sunken road called 42nd Street, which ran from Kania to the town of Sikolaria. As the British started reinforcing Heraklion on May 26th, and the situation in the west was stable, Students decided to launch a new wave of drops over Colonel Brower's whereabouts. 4 companies of paratroopers were taken from Malame on May 28th to reinforce Group East. Furthermore, an Italian regiment of about 3,000 men would make a naval landing at the town of Sitya by midday, which would then continue to advance through the eastern end of the island. On May 27th, Ringel's main offensive was launched. But to their surprise, the New Zealander and Australian forces rallied at 42nd Street and started a bayonet charge. As a result, the Germans were sent packing, suffering losses as they fled. The British had finally won a day of respite, but it wouldn't be enough. Freyberg realized that the Germans were now superior in number and equipment, and without any other choice, ordered an evacuation from the island, starting with Western and Putic's forces at Suda Bay. They would have to traverse a small mountain road across the Lefka Ori, or White Mountains, to the southern bay of Sfakia, where the evacuation fleet would be waiting for them. On May 28th, 2 battalions from the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders Commando were sent from Alexandria to Suda to cover the retreat southwards. The British troops marched 60 to 70 miles through tough terrain under the threat of a
Where are the Greek troops gonna go, though?
continuous
Like, their whole country's gone.
Luftwaffe bombardment.
Where are they gonna go?
Meanwhile, Ringel's mountain troops occupied Kania and Suda and continued their advance in pursuit of the British retreating forces, while also sending reinforcements to Group Centre around Rethymnon. Joined by the Maoris and the British Marines, and employing the last remaining Matilda tanks, the commandos under Brigadier Bob Laycock would see some fighting from Beretiana down the road, managing to hold off the German offensive. But at the town of Babalikani, Laycock's forces were cut off by the Germans, fighting to their last breath to give the evacuation as much time as possible. Laycock and some of his men were able to escape, but the majority ended up killed or captured. At the end of the day, the British forces would finally arrive safely at Sfakia. At the same time, the Germans at Pavolia were pushed back by Vassi's forces, but as the latter was very low on supplies, he would only hold the town for a short while. When the order of evacuation reached Heraklion and Rethymnon, the British soldiers were astonished. They had been highly successful in their defense and thought themselves to be winning the battle. But they quickly followed their orders and prepared to evacuate. From Heraklion, some 4,000 men of Chapel's brigade were transported by Force B under heavy aerial attack. The reinforced German paratroopers then assaulted the city on May 29th, but couldn't stop the garrison from escaping. The following day, the Greek forces at Rethymnon were evacuated, while the Australians remained to defend the city. Group Centre received ample reinforcements, including several panzers, and in the end, Rethymnon fell when Colonel Ian Campbell, left in command of the Australian forces, was forced to surrender at night. From May 28th to June 1st, Admiral King's Force C would carry out the evacuation of some 6,000 men, suffering losses against the Luftwaffe. Of their 40,000 men, the British managed to rescue almost 18,000 of them, while the rest were left behind on the island, totaling in the end some 23,000 casualties. On June 1st, Ringel's mountain forces captured Sfakia, and the remaining 5,000 defenders surrendered. In the east, Brauer's forces managed to link up with the Italians at Iera Petra. This signaled the end of the operation, although the loss of life would continue. Throughout the battle, the Cretan population had aided the British in their struggle against the invaders, fighting with whatever weapons they could gather. Once the island had been occupied, Student ordered the execution of a series of collective punishments against the civilians, with more than 500 inhabitants being massacred.
What? Why are you attacking me? I'm not doing anything. Why? What did I do? This cat is crazy. Eclipse, come back. Please. What is wrong? What? Okay.
Massacred. After the war, the German...
I mean, like, it doesn't seem like too much. Like, I don't mean to... I don't know, it sounds weird to say that, but I mean, like, compared to other places that had, like, millions killed, it doesn't seem like too bad.
General managed to...
Oh, gosh. Hopefully I don't get dislikes.
...to avoid prosecution for the war crimes he committed. Hitler's airborne gamble had been a success, but it wasn't the success he expected. The Germans had suffered massive casualties, almost 6,000 of them, and lost a significant amount of aircraft. The Führer was so aghast by this that he discounted any future use of airborne troops on such a grand scale. The Fallschirmjäger would then be reformed to act as normal land soldiers in future operations, such as Barbarossa. But the Allies, however, would be so impressed by the success of the paratroopers that they rapidly began to build up their own airborne forces, which would be
and they used them a lot in, like, D-Day.
Very important later on in the war. The legacy of the battle is that of a huge victory for air forces over a superior naval foe that was also superior in number with his land forces. Our series on modern warfare will continue, so make sure you are
Wow, well, thank you everyone for watching. Wow, yeah. Now, I guess that'll wrap it up for this series. Let me know what else I would like me to try to next, and yeah, goodbye. Hello everyone, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it and subscribe to my channel, and turn on the notification bell thingy. And if you didn't, then make sure to leave a thumbs down. But yeah, that would be greatly appreciated. And while you're at it, go ahead and watch my other videos. They're probably just as good, and if not better than this one right now. Except for my oldest videos, don't watch those. And, subscribe to these people down here, my fellow sergeants. They're other YouTubers that I either know or I have in high regards. Yeah, even my cat agrees. So, thank you for watching, and have a great day.